Hello, BookTube. Well, it was a huge, varied week on BookTube last week. Far bigger and more varied than I could possibly cover, even if I intended this series to be comprehensive, which I don't. I couldn't. Although there were some ominous notes sounded, and I'll get to that at the end. Once again, the whole experience of BookTube was a necessary respite from the news of the world. One item of which was the Republican nominee for President of the United States strongly suggesting to his followers that they assassinate his Democratic rival. He's a free man. If I made the exact same comment in front of a microphone in the exact same words, I would be in jail right now and facing several $1,000s in legal expenses ever to see the light of day again. But no, the free candidacy goes all the way to the free White House. And on one level, the news in BookTube wasn't that much more encouraging. For something like the 50th week in a row, let's do a rundown of the fun-looking tags that Steve wasn't tagged in, shall we? There was the big book tag. I love big books. There was the This Savage Song tag, the Try a Chapter tag, the Cliches book tag. Who points out more cliches than I do? The book adaptation wish list tag, the Cursed Child book tag, whatever that might be. But of course, the Cursed Child book tag refers to Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, and Harry Potter and the Cursed Child still did a lot of dominating of BookTube. Less than I thought it would, but maybe I don't watch enough channels. There were rants and raves and requiems left, right, and center from people reacting to this thing. Oddly enough, it did not create in me the slightest increase in interest to read it. I'm perfectly content to watch BookTube read it rather than read it myself. A very rare thing for me, but there you have it. And in non-book related things, but still BookTube, something I wanted to point out, Caroline from CarolineReads is doing rather hilarious daily vlogs of her vacation in New Hampshire. They're pretty funny. Both intentionally and un. So I'll leave links to everything down below. You should definitely see them for a chuckle. There were some good roundups. Kitty G did a roundup of recent-ish science fiction and fantasy, and MarieBerg did a top 5 roundup of New York novels. Both of them fascinating. And there was also a group of reviews that I wanted to call to your attention. Books and Bobs did a very good review of The Summer That Everything Melted by Tiffany McDaniel, a book I really liked. Spanmade did a very good review of Black Prism by Brent Weeks. The book that I also liked. She was a little bit gentler with it than I would have been, especially a rather gaping plot hole that she chose the diplomatic route of simply not mentioning. And I noticed a lot of reviews, including some in major science fiction journals, also just ignored that plot hole. Not sure that does an author any good, but Hardcover Reviews, a comic book channel that you comic book fans should definitely be watching if you're not already. He did a great review of the deluxe slipcase box edition of the Batman story Court of Owls, with career high artwork by the great Greg Capullo and script by Scott Snyder that started off horrible and managed to get worse with every single issue until the final issue, which was almost all exposition. There were a couple of little figures at the bottom of every panel. All the rest were words, and none of the words make any. They were all a desperate attempt to correct the deficiencies of the previous 11 issues, but nothing could help at that point. God himself couldn't have saved it. But still, the slipcase is worth getting just for some of the greatest Batman artwork of all time. Sam at Thoughts on those were the reviews. Sam at Thoughts on Tomes did a very good video on clearly and objectively discussing the shortcomings of things we like. The points she made and the way she made them were all wonderful. It was pretty clearly, although she didn't stress this, it was pretty clearly a mild rebuke to the blind fandom that has been up in arms over Harry Potter and the Cursed Child and a couple of other books I could think of. And once again, she's absolutely right. You don't do the book or the author or the fandom any favors by ignoring shortcomings. That you just don't. It's not a good thing to do. It's you're undermining the thing you claim to love. And then there was Britta Bohler, who did a video on the Man Booker long list in which she had the nerve, the temerity, the unmitigated gall to, I can hardly make myself say the words, disagree with me. She spent the whole video making very good points. I hate that. She talked about women's voices, for instance, which is something that I hate to say it, but it totally slipped my mind. Not just the number of women on the list, but the kinds of things the novels involving women had them doing. A wonderful point. So, still. Let's see here. And first, I wanted to include, when her segment of Last Week in BookTube, just bootless vituperation. Then I made the mistake of downloading and reading her novel, The Decision, and it's really, really good. So, number one, you should all go and subscribe to her channel. And number two, and just as important, you should all download and read her novel. It's a really, really good book. Marlinelina talked about, she did a video, sort of an omnibus video about a bunch of different things. But one of the things she talked about was BookTube personas. She made a very good point about how quite a few of the people who make BookTube videos are probably, like her, introverts who are shy around strangers and put on a persona in order to make their videos. I thought this was fascinating. I am, of course, in the exact same position myself. I'm extremely shy, and I don't like talking to strangers. Okay, all right. But still, her point was... what you see is what you get with me, but her point was very well taken when it came to a lot of people on BookTube, I suspect. And I'd love to hear, once you see her video, I'd love you to let's talk about it in her comments field and see how much that's true. How much of a YouTube persona do you really adopt when you put yourself in front of your camera? I would love to hear the answer to that. It's coming from someone who, listening to me natter on and talk about books isn't any different in person than it is on camera. But I suspect that's not true for a lot of you, and I would love to hear what the differences are. Do you actually have to overcome fear to turn on the camera? And what about the editing process, which I don't do? Does that make it worse or better? I can't help but think that an introvert who worked up the courage to make a video might kill it in the editing process anyway, and we'd still never see it. Anyway, then we get to the ominous notes, and I want to finish up with those, and I hope that they aren't ominous. I don't think they were the intent of any of the three people I want to talk about, but nevertheless, Insomniac returned after a 2-month hiatus, talked about writing his book, talked about really knuckling down and getting it done, talked also about getting married and going back to full-time work, and left things in the air as to when or even if we might hear from him again. And Max at Well Done Books changed. He moved into a new apartment, had a new background, new settings, and talked about changes on his channel. He stressed over and over again in the video that he still loved books, that his channel would still be about books, but there was a but hanging over it all, and it was impossible to miss. And Jacob at the 8th Potter did a video called For the Love of BookTube, which made me spit up at first when he talked about how wonderful and inclusive and welcoming the general BookTube community is. Maybe it's true for some people. But his channel is incredibly welcoming, and he talked about growing from no subscribers to, I think he has 7,000 now, and meeting friends that he's never met in person, that he still considers friends, that he still really likes, and all sorts of things like that. The good that being part of the book community has done for him, and how wonderful he finds it. And I was nodding along to all of those points, that the fact that this collective discussion is happening across all the countries in the world that aren't dominated by regressive religious sects that don't allow you the internet or the freedom to read, that community, the wonder of that discussion, that ongoing discussion, cannot be overstated. But he said at the end of his video, I just wanted to thank you all, and I'll be back. And I thought, great. And then I thought, okay, but if that's what you're saying, why do I feel like I just heard this speech at a funeral? It sounded like there was a but hanging over the whole thing. It sounded like all of this has been wonderful. I just want you all to know it's been great. And then what? The natural rejoinder to the tone of his comments was to expect him then to, I don't know, go into sportscasting? Go on a long vacation with no books? I never return to BookTube, certainly. And these three together added to the baker's dozen of BookTube channels that have pretty much disappeared in the time, even the short time that I've been on BookTube. Even new BookTubers that, you know, they went to making one video a week, and now it's straining at that. You hardly ever see them in your subscription feed. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. If you see those videos, let me know. And also, whether you watch them or not, in the comments field, if you could do my heart some good by assuring me that you all intend to stick around, that would be great, because I'm having a ball. I don't want this thing rolling up. I don't want some of its standard bearers walking away to do cooking videos or makeup tutorials or anything like that. I want to talk about books. But anyway, that was last week in BookTube as I saw it. Some highlights for you, and I will try to remember to put all the links down below. And I'll see you soon, BookTube. Thank you.